I'll tell you how this experience has shaped some of the ways that I've been praying recently. Obviously, I'm praying for God to be merciful and to give us effective treatments to contain the spread of the virus, to mitigate it, all of those things, praying for our leaders every day, praying for our healthcare workers. But beyond that, I'm going back to things that I've been praying for a long time, but I'm seeing them in a new light. So when we pray, give us today our daily bread. Mm-hmm. I've prayed that for years and years. Now it seems more real, mm-hmm. because now we're at a point where we can recognize the fragility of life and even of all the things we've come to depend on. And thus, like I mentioned earlier, living day to day has come out much more in the way that I pray. As I give God gratitude for every single day that I'm alive now, because the reality that I don't have entitlement to any of it is much more real.
I think so. It's a time, I think, that has shaped me in praying more in terms of thanksgiving, being thankful for God's care through this. And of course, we haven't, my family hasn't suffered. And if there's anyone in the church who's experiencing hardship, we stand ready to help as a church family. But just overall thankfulness at the Lord's provision in these times that are so uncertain. When you go to the grocery store and the shelves are empty, it's not like you can decide what you want to eat and then go get it. You have to go see what's there and then want whatever's there. Mm-hmm. So that's a new thing probably for some of us, and I think in its own way it's a good thing to experience. But I think just overall Thanksgiving, and then I've prayed specifically two ways, and they may seem contradictory, but they're not. And one is that God would accomplish all His purpose in this pandemic. And I'm not saying I know what all that is, but I do think it's good to pray that He accomplish all His purpose in it. And then the second thing I pray for is that God would deliver us from this pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so I want to pray those two things because both, I think, are scriptural, and I think both ultimately are in line with God glorifying Himself in the world. So that's some of the ways my prayer has been shaped.
Yeah, we heard a great sermon a few weeks ago from Acts chapter 8 when the church was persecuted and scattered. Mm-hmm. That seemed such a terrible thing, and yet God was at work to take the gospel to farther and farther reaches as a result. What might He be doing here? And how might we pray for an awakening in our city, mm-hmm. throughout our nation, and around the world that results from this? I think we should be praying fervently for that.
I think so as well.